Hello again, boys and girls, and Miss Diane. Let's get started with our next math lesson, Chapter 8, Lesson 9, time to the hour and half hour. Our math objective today, students will tell time to the hour and half hour using digital and analog clocks. Let's go ahead and get started. So our lesson starts with a little story. It's about a class in elementary who's getting ready to go to the library. Their library time is at 1:30, so they get up and they go. So I'm going to go ahead and show that time on my analog clock up here in the corner. So if the class goes to the library at 1:30, my hour hand has to be between the 1 and the 2. Let me zoom in so you can get a better view of that. Between the 1 and the 2, because it's after the 1 o'clock hour, before the 2, right in the middle. And the minute hand points to the 6, which is halfway at 30. I can also show this on my digital clock as 1 for the hour and 30 to the right as my minutes. Let's go ahead and move on and get started with our lesson. This was the I do, now time for a redo. You can tell time to the hour and the half hour. 1 hour is 60 minutes. Let me zoom in a bit. You start here at the 12 and your minute hand goes around, and every time it doubles up, the hour has changed. You start here and end here. This shows me 9 o'clock. My hour hand is pointing to the 9, minute hand points to the 12, which means that it is 9 o'clock. On this side, I'm showing time to the half hour. My hour hand is still in the 9th hour because it's after 9, before the 10. My minute hand is on the 6, which means 30 minutes has gone by. It's half of the hour. We can show it on a digital clock with 9 on the left and 30 on the right to show the hour here and the minutes here. That means it is now 9:30. Let's move on. So in today's lesson, we're going to tell not only time on an analog clock, but on a digital clock at the same time. So this is what your lesson will look like. You will be given a time up here in the corner. So number 1, the time they gave me is 11:30. We need to show this time on the analog clock first, then on a digital clock. In our math book, they have already given us the place of the hour hand. All we need to do is draw the minute hand. So 11:30, my hour hand is after the 11, before the 12. My minute hand is going to be on the 6. And this shows 11:30. Let's move on to number 2. The time I'm looking for is 5:30. I know it's a little hard to tell. My markers seep through from the other side, but it is 5:30. My hour hand is already pointing to that position, halfway between 5 and 6, after the 5, before the 6. I need to draw my minute hand. My minute hand would be pointing towards 6. Remember, my minute hand is longer. 5:30 is also the same as saying 5:30. Let's move on to talk math. What is the difference between an analog clock and a digital clock? Please go ahead and ask either your mom or your dad, an older brother or sister, somebody to have this conversation with you. I want you to talk about the math. What is the difference between an analog clock and a digital clock? If you need more time to discuss, pause my video. A great way to start this would be the difference between an analog clock and a digital clock is so many of you have probably come up with many different responses. In the past, when I've had this conversation with students, I've heard that the difference between an analog clock and a digital clock is that an analog clock uses an hour hand and a minute hand to show the time. A digital clock only uses the numbers. I've also heard that on an analog clock, the numbers represent the hour and they also represent the minute. Whereas on a digital clock, all we get are the numbers. Now, if you have something a little different, I hope you shared it with your mom and dad. All right, boys and girls, it's time to do your math on your own. So we'll go to the next page. On my own, you're going to be doing the same thing we did on the previous page. Look at the time, show it on the analog clock and the digital clock. Look at the time, show it on the analog clock and the digital clock. Now here, you're going to notice something that we haven't seen yet. It says 9 o'clock. Well, we've seen it, but I haven't really discussed it yet. This is the same way. This is the same thing as saying 9 o'clock with numbers, except we write it in words. So sometimes you will be asked to write the time with words. You will represent time like this, 9 O with an apostrophe clock. This stands for 9 of the clock. And if you remember when we've talked about apostrophes, when we're contracting words, this apostrophe here means that we've taken something out and we've put them together to make it one word. So 9 o'clock stands for 9 of the clock. That apostrophe means that we took out the F for of and we took out the word the. Number 5 is 1:30. 6 is 8 o'clock. 7 is right 2:30 on the clock. 8 is right 6 o'clock on the clock. On the next page, as always, you do have word problems. You do need to underline what you know, circle what you need to find out. The hour hand is between 1 and 2. So a good rule of thumb would be to go ahead and draw that. Draw the hour hand between 1 and 2. The minute hand is on 6. What time is it? So go ahead and draw it. And then write that time over here in your space. Number 10, the time on the clock is 1 hour after 2. What time is it? Write that time. If my hour is 2 and we have 1 hour later, I know my minutes are going to stay the same. You need to write that 1 hour later here. And for right math, how many minutes after the hour does this clock show? So over here, we have an analog clock. My red shorthand shows the hour and my minute hand over here shows the minute. The question is, how many minutes after the hour does the clock show? So remember, we start here, and if I was to count 5, 10, 15, how many minutes does that show? Please answer that in a complete sentence. A great way would be, the clock shows blank minutes after the hour. That's just one way to answer it. All right, boys and girls, you are on your own. I will see you again next time.